The initials JOLO stood for Jolly Old Loafers Office. So in early 1861, an organization was started here in Galveston by a group of men that were unofficial representatives of the Committee on Public Safety, and they were directed to try and keep a watch on the ship traffic that was coming off the entrance to Galveston Bay. And they didn't really have any kind of formal organization, but they referred to themselves as the JOLOs, J-O-L-O-S. And we never really knew what those initials stood for, but the men kept a detailed logbook on their activities here and all the ship traffic that they saw, anything that might potentially be a military action that they saw. All of that's detailed in an incredibly detailed logbook that's in the collection of the Rosenberg Library. And the men kept their office, and where they had their main part of activity was right there on top of the Henley building, which had been built 4 or 5 years before the advent of the Civil War. And there was a white cupola, which is kind of a little storehouse building on the top of this building, where they kept their log, kept their telescopes and all the things they needed to record their activities and to signal to other places around about what the ship traffic was like. We always called them the lookouts, and people at the time called them the lookouts, so we assumed that the J-O-L-O, that the L-O stood for lookout. But we never really knew how that originated. And a few weeks ago, I happened upon a letter in the Houston Post in 1900 that actually kind of defines what those activities were. And it turns out that a man named Gearing actually wrote a letter to the Veterans Column and said that he was here when all these activities were going on. And he says the JOLOs were a bunch of steamboat men like himself, because he was a steamer captain and actually owned parts of 2 different vessels. And that these men started this organization informally. The initials JOLO stood for Jolly Old Loafers Office. Loafer with an apostrophe, because they considered themselves loafers.